You're listening to the No Fruits Podcast, and I'm Kafa.
And this is Maurice.
And again, we want to say Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year to you.
Are there any Happy New Year songs?
To you.
Maurice has got one for us.
Happy New Year, Happy New Year to you. I mean, I just made that up. That was just in my head. I don't know why.
All right, sounds good to me.
I don't know if there's any Happy New Year songs that I can think of.
We're still so hung up on Christmas carols, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm like really drawing. I'm really thinking about it. I can't think of any, to be honest. Wow.
So any songwriters out there, if you have a New Year's hit you'd like us to listen to, send it our way.
Right. Right. I know that's right. Mm-hmm. So, y'all, I know we keep going back and forth with this. And again, you know, we had a little break. And like I said, we have a lot of stuff that we need to try to kind of catch up on a little bit. So, especially for our faith-based listeners, like this is really, really, really interesting. I want to know, how do y'all feel about the evangelical church and their up and down support for our current president of the United States? I really want to know how y'all feel about that.
Maurice, how do you feel?
So, I understand that there is a political component to church. I learned the hard way to some degree, and it assists in some of my church hurt, as some people, you know, as others may have experienced. But also in this, it really shows, I believe, the divide. I think more than ever, as far as my lifetime, I'll put it like this. And I was born in the mid-'70s. In my lifetime, this is a true, in my opinion, blatant show of really where the church is in relation to social, economic, racial, and cultural divides, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And because, unfortunately, our president, even though he does not necessarily verbally talk about any divides when it really comes down to it, but things that he really shows support for, I think actions speak louder than words.
Okay. And
so as I listen to some of my senior members of my family who kind of support some of these evangelical pastors, such as a Paula White or things like that, Billy Graham, things like that, you know, these persons that may have supported our president in quiet are now, a president like this in quiet now are really showing their true colors, in my opinion. So how do I feel about it? I always thought that there was a separation of church and state. Mm-hmm. And so there's a part of me that's like, wow, there really isn't. It really, really isn't. And it really shows the how much the church supports the political agenda overall of this particular country. I can't speak about across seas because I don't live there. I'm not there day to day. I can hear what people have to say about it. I'm only speaking from my own experience, and not saying that my experience is law. Doesn't necessarily have to be right for you. And you can say, hey, well, you know, Maurice, that's not reality. Well, it's a reality for me because this is the way I see it through my eyes. Okay. You know, until we have a true discussion, which is the No Fruit Podcast, about how we're building the fruit of whatever we're trying to put together. All right. Whatever tree that needs to grow and flourish and produce the fruit in order for us to educate what we need, you know, whoever is out there one way or another.
Right. So
I truly feel some type of way about it because it is you realize how much how involved the church really is in reference to some of these divides that I mentioned earlier?
I mean, I think the church and the state constitutionally are separate. I think as the United States grew and the need for services grew and expanded, churches stepped up and became businesses where they were offering services, and those services were compensated by the government. So I think the reason why some churches have more say is because of their business state and everything. A lot of churches have a nonprofit arm outside of them being a religious institution.
Right.
They run daycares, they run food, banks. There's so many things, and a lot of those things are funded by the government. They're not doing it out of the kindness of their heart because the community is bereaved and we have people who want to watch other people's kids. No, they want to get paid for that.
Right.
The church is not doing things and helping people to sign up for housing and get toys for their kids. They're not doing that out of the kindness, totally out of the kindness of their heart. A lot of that, they are writing grants for it. They're getting, funding from corporations and from the government that pads their pockets a little bit and gives them funding so that they can do these types of services in the community. So in that, the church or the subsidiary of the church being the nonprofit are doing business with the government. So they're not separate. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where things begin, because now I have to be careful what I say and what I do, and I have to support the person or the institution that's paying my paycheck. Right. So if whomever is in leadership is tooting this horn and saying this is the way we're going to go, if that person is the one that's going to send you the check, then I'm on board kind of with them, and I think that's what all of this has come down to, that people kind of sway which way the wind is blowing, that people are lukewarm. Right. And the Bible talks a little bit about being lukewarm, right. That I'm going to spew you out. Right. Because you have to be there, either be hot or cold. You can't be lukewarm in it. And that's not only just about, knowing Christ and living that life of being a Christian, but I think in this as well, like, church goers and church leaders, if we're doing this because we want to do it because God tells us to do it to help, those who don't have, well, why are we charging them?
Well, so here's the thing. I mean, and I'm listening to you talk about you have some really, really good and valid points.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
One of the things, more especially this whole piece of being lukewarm, I think that's a easy and safe way of just living, because then, if you're lukewarm, not hot nor cold, not on fire, not freezing rain, whatever it might be, because once you take a stand, people truly understand where you are, and then they have the opportunity to really point their finger, chastise you, uplift you, whatever it might be. And I think the church, unfortunately, stays in this lukewarm perspective overall, because you're trying to help, aid, and assist a little bit of any and everybody, not just from as you're stating, getting financial donations that's going to help them out. But, what happens when a Christian church has someone that's a Jehovah's Witness or a Seventh-day Adventist come? Are you necessarily turning them away, or are you trying to help them out? And I think from a Christian perspective,
their services,
whatever it might be, yeah.
So does your church provide daycare services to the Muslim child? Is that what you're asking?
I mean, it could be something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just saying in general, right, when I say help. And it could be, hey, they come into the church because they don't have any food. Mm-hmm. They don't have any clothes, things like that.
Right. And again, that's the separation of the church and state, and that's the separation of the church and the nonprofit arm, because being a nonprofit says that I'm not going to push religion on anyone. I'm not going to push beliefs on anyone. I'm just here to help. But that's the part I think that sometimes we get confused, because as a Christian, we have to have benevolence and we have to have kindness and all those things. But then when we try to make that kindness a business, that's where it gets a little tricky.
Right, because overall, business is not kind. Overall. So,
because at the end of the line, you want to make...
You need a profit.
Profit, or if you're a nonprofit, you want to make ends meet. So, you want to make sure all your bills are paid.
Right.
So, again, like you said, hey, I'm not just going around and serving and everyone a meal.
Right.
I'm looking for a way to purchase the food, to heat the food, to get the food out to the people, all those things. Does someone need to be paid for that labor? It continues on. And I'm not knocking the church totally that they are looking to get paid. Again, pay Caesar what's, owed, but,
right.
But as you're saying,
keep their lights on too.
Right. And hey, you are a church administrator, and you and I both understand, everything from a roll of paper towels to the heat is very, very important, not alone just the musician and all those. It's a quite complex business.
Part, and I think that's the part that people kind of lose track of. That just because you're only there on Sundays does not stop the other 6 days of the week.
Right.
And even on a Sunday, you could be there for 2 hours, 3 hours. Then what happens the other 21 hours, 20 to 21 hours when you're not there?
So to be a good steward of that property that the church owns, churches started offering other services throughout the week, whether it was a daycare, or whether it was after school programs, or whether it was a senior citizens program where seniors could come and meet. I understand all of that. But again, your thing is, well, how come the church and the politicians are kind of commingling things? And I'm just bringing up the fact that, hey, the church is doing business with them. So that's kind of where it stands. I think, and maybe where it kind of got started, I'm not quite sure, but so that's just where things are. I don't know what to say about them.
I think going back to what you stated in the very beginning, which is understanding where your bread is being buttered. So if I know I'm going to support this person and their agenda, and if I can get my group of people, in most cases, my group of people, to support you, that's a quick way for you to get. And I'm just going to throw this number out there. I know right now, I think this will be above average number for a church, would be 100 people on a Sunday. It seems like right now. But if I have 100 people on a Sunday, and I can influence my flock to support you and your agenda, the question is, how do I benefit from that? Some people, depending on the church, they'll be able to benefit from relaxed taxes, as you stated, maybe some federal funding somewhere, grants, whatever it might be. Help us be the gatekeeper for this particular grant, and people coming to, they apply to us and not to, so many different ways of working.
One thing that when you were a church administrator, you were the hub for the Census Bureau. So,
we were one of them.
So how did you get that? That wasn't just because you filled out some application and was randomly picked. I'm sure it was because of some political connections that someone within the church had.
Well, no, what happened? Well, in that particular case, the young lady who had come to the church, I had actually seen her twice before, walking down the street, and just one day she just came out the clear blue and said, "Hey, we're looking for, a place to have this. Someone referred us to you." Exactly, someone referred. But I'm not. I don't totally recall. I don't believe the person who referred was a total member of the church. But like you're saying, there was some type of referral, because I do believe, now that I remember, I'm starting to remember, I believe the young lady was referred to as by the block captain of that particular, one of those blocks in that particular neighborhood. She
yes,
had
and block captains are political. Block captains meet, and they meet with city council. That's political, and that's what I'm saying. So you're not pulling the two apart.
Right.
She wasn't going there saying, hey, benevolence or whatever. No, I'm sure there were some dollars that she exchanged for her to to use that space as a training location, as a hub in that community. It wasn't like, oh, we're a church, we want to help you.
No, I mean, because it wasn't a dead of winter. I mean, and the Census Bureau did understand, like, hey, in order for us to hit this particular group of people in this particular neighborhood, we need a place to train these persons, because we were training at one time, and then after they had finished the census, during the census is when we started to slow down and we didn't see them again. So, so yes, I mean, so there were some funds being exchanged on the premise of them renting our space, because they needed a big space for like 75 people or whatever it was, for their trainings. So, so if you want to say from a political perspective, I mean, there was that aspect of that.
I mean, and how many churches in their basements in some towns are polling places?
Right.
So there is no true separation. I mean, I think the separation is that, hey, you can't get up and preach, and you shouldn't get up and preach about, politicians and things like that. I think that would be ill-advised. But
I mean, but how many people allow some of these same politicians to come in and either speak to the congregation and or even preach?
I mean, I've been in.
I mean, it's been a few.
I mean, growing up, again, I've seen people say, hey, I'm going to bring in several people. So today we have these two. Next week we'll have another two. Like, it was never leaning one way.
But see, I think that's the difference, because some people kind of lean one way. And this is kind of where I was getting to in the very beginning about reading this article from Reuters.com, just about how this group of evangelicals are really supporting the president. But part of that is because of, again, what are these group of persons that are evangelicals? What are they getting out of it to some degree?
Right. Is it the person again with that title, or is it the whole organization? So it'd be different if you said, hey, all of AMEs are supporting Trump. That's a little bit different than you're saying, hey, this one person.
I think if you listen though to what they're saying, they say evangelicals. They're not saying one particular church or one part of because I don't know how evangelicals are really broken down versus if you said someone was Christian, well, a version of that would be, a branch of that would be AMEs or Baptists or AME Zions or United Methodists or what, like you could kind of really break that down. When you kind of just say evangelicals, because I don't know enough about evangelicals at all. I don't know if they're technically Christian or not. I really don't know. I would say so, but so if you're going to say that, then so that's like you saying the AMEs or the Baptists are supporting Hillary
evangelicals
Clinton or
are
whatever.
part of the Christian church.
So with that being said, and the reason why I had a doubt, to be honest, because that's not necessarily a group of Christians that you hear about.
Because it's a cross denominational type thing. It's not. Right. I don't think it's like one. It's not a denomination.
Right. So that's what I mean by it's a little, when you start talking about that group of persons, it gets a little confusing to me. Again, that's me coming from my own understanding and not really being around those that even profess that they were evangelicals.
I mean, and the reality for me, I didn't really hear evangelicals until Trump was running for office.
Right.
You didn't hear that word. And he was like, oh, well, even the evangelicals support me and they like me and whatever. So I don't really know where that's coming from. Granted, they probably, the group and the term was probably around before then.
Right.
But, because who's to say that you and I are not considered evangelicals according to what the definition is. Mm-hmm. So, it's kind of hard to put all of that in one basket.
Right.
So again, do you have strong beliefs about certain politics and certain political people? Do I? Yes. So if we spoke it, then does what we're stating speak for all Christians? But it's all about how that message gets out. So if they say, Minister Maurice Chisholm, said this, then people are going to think, oh, well, he's a minister. He does, this is how he thinks.
Yeah.
So it can be taken out of context because of your title or whatever. I just think that's just what.
And as you even take a look at the definition of evangelical and try and find out really what's the difference between evangelical and Protestant or evangelical and Methodist and things like that, it's still, even in the definition, it's still blurry.
I think it's very vague.
Is
as I'm
blurry.
looking it up as well, I think it's a very vague definition. So therefore, it's lottie-dottie and everybody.
Right.
Falls within that. So for anyone to say, well, the evangelicals are doing this, like, that's very, very, as you're stating, very vague.
Right.
So what does it really mean?
Right. And so it's just these are the type of things that you, as we have these type of conversations and these discussions, we would love to hear from, your perspective. Those that have gone on to, because that doesn't mean that Kaffa and I have not been in Bible teaching places. Kaffa's been in Bible school, being ministers, so forth and so on. That doesn't mean that we're not educated to some degree ourselves, but that just also means that, hey, we haven't been educated on some of these differences to the point where you exactly know what it is. And it looks like there isn't one.
And we're always willing to learn. So,
right.
Again, this is a discussion.
It's
a conversation.
Right.
So whatever information, you have for us, please share it on Fit.
Right.
And we'll gladly read it and become more educated on it. But so again, Maurice, you're stating that evangelicals who once supported him are now somewhat denouncing him. Is that what the premise of the article?
It's not they're not necessarily denouncing them. The point is they're showing that their numbers for support are, they're not denouncing as much as they are just dwindling for support, because of, more especially in this particular article, they're talking about the millennials and just how our current president has started to put people in certain boxes and starting to push away those boxes. So if you have millennials who support the LGBTQ community, well, they're not liking that. So no, they're not going to support him. Even though it does talk about the evangelicals those numbers have been dwindling kind of quickly anyway in that particular church. But those that are staying, they're not necessarily supporting him as much as they used to either. Again, not necessarily denouncing him. And I think denounce is kind of a crazy word to use, but they're just not in support of the current president as they were before.
Right.
And
I mean, a lot has happened, with him, for him, within the last year. Just looking at 2019. So I can see why some would, hey, I'm not 100% behind him.
Right.
But again, until they need him. I mean, again, that's just what I think the whole game is that, when I need you, I'm right behind you. I'm, your ride or die, if you would.
Right.
But then as soon as you, which he has done, once you pull me out and put me on the carpet, put me on Front Street, then I'm kind of like, no, I'm cool. So. I
mean, because look, they even talk about how he considers himself a Presbyterian or something along those lines. And, instead of going to his church on Christmas Eve, he went to evangelical church to try to help strengthen his, the bonds again.
Right.
So So he understands where even for him, where his bread is being buttered.
Right. And that's what I said. I think it's all about, what you need. So he's had a troubling end to 2019. I think he's trying to pick up the pieces and rub arms with those who are going to elect whether or not they're going to put him out of office.
Right.
So if some of those people who are serving and they're evangelicals, then guess what? He's going to go there and rub noses with them and, see how dark his nose gets.
Right. And so in that, as I said, there's a whole lot that's been going on since we've taken our break. But, when you take a look at how the newspapers are starting to slowly break away from him, and then you have those that are trying to support him. But even with some of those churches, newspapers trying to support him, some of their editors and stuff like that are starting to really leave too. Like, hey, this is a really slippery slope. We don't need to be a part of this. So I think right now, this is where the Christians, quote unquote, need to start to really pull together better overall. But I think, and when it comes down to it, it's going to be party over religion. Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever, is going to be more important than you being Christian or anything else. And one time it was like Christian versus Muslim. Well, that's not the case anymore. That was a moment. That doesn't mean it doesn't still feel that way from time to time, but it's not as pressing as now Democrat versus Republican, rich versus the poor. How many evangelicals are being hit by the lack of food stamps right now? Like, it's so many different things, as you stated, Kav, about just the support. Where's our support coming from? You really don't know what the needs are and where they're going to try to get that support from. So do they need to butter up our president just so they can get their services, keep their services? I don't know. I don't know. So,
2020 is also an election year. So if you haven't registered, and please, it's a lot that you need to think about during 2020.
Right.
So it's an election year. So hopefully things will change and we'll see. But if not, continue to pray. Pray for your president. Pray for all your leaders of the country. They sure do need us at a time such as this. And pray for the world, because the world is looking at the United States. Right. Because the United States boasts of being
the best country
and being
ever.
Number one and being the richest and being, top of this and top of that. But a lot of the world is looking at us differently. So
most definitely,
those, saints, please pray. Pray for our leaders. Pray for our leadership. Pray for one another. Mm-hmm. It's time to really see things better in 2020.
Right.
So most definitely pray. Pray without ceasing.
Yes, most definitely. So, y'all, is that time?
It is. Aww.
And, yeah. So, just make sure you tune in next week to us.
Yes.
And you could hear some more from us. And once again, we have a lot coming your way this season. And we really, really, truly thank y'all, and we love y'all.
We love you. God bless you.
Peace.